Dear class, today we present you with the second generation, from a business boom to an industry crash. In 1976 and 77, the US first massively fell for video games. Both the console market, based on the idea of video game pioneer Ralph Baer, and the arcade market took off, realizing great sales figures. The home console had to come a long way between 72 and 78. The difference between console and game did not yet exist. All possible games were programmed in the hardware itself. For example, it was impossible to buy a new game and connect it to the Odyssey. It wasn't until the end of 1976 that a true turnaround came about. Two new, highly innovative, programmable consoles were introduced: RCA Studio 2 and Fairchild's Channel F. The introduction of microprocessors and ROM chips opened the door to more innovative games. Their codes were not built into the hardware, but in small graphic cards, or cartridges. So, these consoles introduced the cartridge system that would prevail through the second generation and beyond. The Studio 2 and Channel F were pushed to the background in 1977 when Atari launched its Atari 2600. The company aggressively marketed the console and its range of games, boasting better graphics and audio. Ultimately, the console gained a reputation as the godfather of video games. Of the most popular games for the Atari 2600, some, such as Pitfall and Missile Command, were specifically created for the device. Others, like Demon Attack, were also available for different consoles, or, like Pac-Man and Space Invaders, derived from popular arcade games. One game in particular has been an inspiration for both players and designers. Adventure, created by Warren Robinett, is considered the first game that can be classified as an action-adventure game. Both its stashing system, in which the player could hold and drop items, and the concept of exploring, in which the player was able to move freely through the maze, was highly innovative at the time. Furthermore, Adventure was the first game to contain a so-called Easter egg. Such hidden messages, features, or jokes have since then become a widespread phenomenon across different media. Let's go back to the console. Because of its enormous popularity, the Atari 2600 was the console that epitomized the second generation. But it was definitely not the only one. In fact, the industry entered a time of crisis soon after the Atari's release. There was an oversupply of consoles and a shortage of innovative games. Game sales dropped dramatically, and several companies folded. The only player that more or less survived was Atari because of their existing and growing supply of creative games. However, the crisis did affect Atari's dominance in the market, and space was created for new companies, making the period of 79 to 82 one of unprecedented bloom and creativity. In 1981, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette called home video gaming America's fastest growing hobby. Once again, players and families were overwhelmed with hardware and software choices. Not even 5 years after the first crisis did the industry go into a second, more radical recession. At this time, there were numerous consoles on the market, including the Atari 2600, the 5200, the Bally Astrocade, the ColecoVision, the ColecoGemini, the Emerson Arcadia 2001, the Fairchild Channel F System 2, the Magnavox Odyssey 2, the Mattel Intellivision, and the Vectrex. All these platforms needed games, and the release of so many new games flooded the market. The result? A massive industry shakeout known as the video game crash of 1983, otherwise known as the Atari shock. Apart from market saturation, other reasons for the crash have also been put forward. Some suggested that it was simply the end of a teenage fad. Others put the blame on the mismanagement of a single firm, Atari. For example, there was the market failure of some notable major games. In 1981, Atari attempted to take advantage of the craze following the arcade game Pac-Man by releasing a version for the Atari 2600. However, development was rushed to have the game out in time for the Christmas season, making it a much bleaker version of the popular arcade game. Although the game managed to sell well in terms of absolute numbers, Atari had grossly overestimated the number of sales it would generate. The release of the highly publicized E.T. game followed a similar trajectory, and it is now commonly referred to as one of the worst video games of all time. And let's not forget the introduction of a new platform for playing games, the home computer. All in all, the sales of home video games had dropped considerably during this period, from 3 billion in 1982 to as low as 100 million in 1985, leading to bankruptcy for many game companies at the time. This time, Atari was not spared. Nolan Bushnell, co-creator of Atari, said that very seldom do you have an industry in which the dominant player not only abandons leadership, but abandons the industry. Ultimately, chaos led to opportunity, and the previously little-known Nintendo brand, which had slowly made a name for itself in Japan, emerged victoriously in the US. In fact, Japan would soon become the lead producer of games and consoles, a position it has held ever since.